everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 146. So today is another interview, and with another Lucha Libre Laughs wrestler. I want to introduce to all of my listeners what I believe one of the most talented US indie wrestlers in the US right now. More recently, you may have seen him in the Oriental Theatre doing what he does best for Lucha Libre Laughs, and quite possibly one or two matches that he's had in a WWE ring, but we'll touch on all of that during the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome onto the Wrestling with Johners podcast, the Yoga Monster Mike Sydal. So Mike, great to have you on the Wrestling with Johners podcast. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I am absolutely wonderful. Thank you for asking. How are you, John?
I'm doing really, really well. Fantastic to be speaking to you today, and thank you for agreeing to do this. But when I originally hooked up and kind of arranged this interview, I know that a lot of promotions in the US are starting to get back on their feet following, coronavirus and the whole pandemic. Now, we did speak a little bit off air, but I know that Lucha Libre and Laughs were meant to have come back into action over the weekend, this past Friday and Saturday, but those shows have now been put back a month till I think the 21st and 22nd of August. Now, I think we decided that you're not at the moment currently part of them shows, but kind of how hard is it for you as a performer not being able to perform right now? I mean, it's probably been maybe 4 or 5 months since your last match, and how are you feeling about wanting to get back into the ring? You must be quite anxious about all of that.
How's that for a response to the first question?
That's fine. Carry on.
My God, protein shake. It's hard. I'll tell you, John, I'm doing just fine with not having wrestled for a few months. I was going at it pretty hard for about 12 and a half years, and my body is really enjoying the break. Yes. So, my dog just came in the room. Come here.
That's all right. You may hear my dogs bark in the background at some point, but no. But animals were allowed. Hi, what's the dog's name?
This is Pumpkin.
Pumpkin. Hello, Pumpkin. And anybody watching this on YouTube can say hi to Pumpkin as well. But that's cool. So I mean, I bet if you've been able to knock off any ring rust inside a wrestling ring yet, Mike? I mean, have you been able to hit any training facilities and kind of hit the ropes and take a few bumps, or has that opportunity not arose yet?
I mean, that opportunity is there. We have a training school here just north of Kansas City where my friend Niles Planquet, he's a wine connoisseur and a wrestler. He's really, really good, and he runs that facility. And I help train the students at that facility. But since we started the quarantine in mid-March, I have not been up there. And we're no longer in quarantine, but I feel like the quarantine was lifted too soon, and I just don't feel comfortable getting in the ring yet. So I haven't got up there. So I have not taken any bumps, and my body is really thanking me for it. So
I like that.
I'm okay with all of that. When I see wrestling coming back closer on the horizon, then at that time I'll start hopping back in the ring.
Absolutely. But I bet you're keeping yourself active at home. I mean, we know you was kind of a bit of a yoga master, the Yoga Monster, of course. So you're still keeping yourself active, still keeping yourself fit around the home and around the local area. What are you doing to kind of keep yourself fit and healthy around your local area then, Mike?
Yes, so I do yoga I've been doing a lot of yoga, man. 2 to 4 hours a day. So today just finished a 2-hour yoga with my brother, who I'm living with, and so we did 2 videos. We did a Dylan Warner video and then a Simon Atta video. Simon Atta is an Australian guy, a lot of plyometrics and calisthenics, and then and Dylan Warner is a lot of vinyasa yoga and some working on some cool handstand tricks. So I do that, and then later today I will hop out onto my deck. So I like to do hot yoga, and we discussed just right before we started recording here, in Kansas City this summer it gets pretty hot. So it'll get up to about 98, 99 Fahrenheit today, which in the UK and in Celsius that's close to about 40 degrees. So pretty steamy. So I'll go out onto the deck and do about 90 minutes of Bikram yoga and come back in, finish with maybe a half hour of some deep stretch. So awesome. I'm definitely staying busy, staying active, and staying healthy. Namaste.
Indeed. That's good to hear. That's really good to hear. Let's kind of have a look at your wrestling fandom then, because I'm assuming that you and your brother got into wrestling as fans at quite an early age. Can you remember how you were introduced to pro wrestling for the first time as fans then, Mike?
Sure, yeah. Matt and I when we were kids, we watched. They had a syndicated WCW TV show on Sunday mornings on the local TV, and I remember Rick Rude and Ricky Steamboat were very angry at each other for one reason or another, and then and Rick Rude broke Ricky Steamboat's nose, and Ricky Steamboat had to go home and tell his son that his nose was broken and he couldn't wrestle and he couldn't make money for the family because of Rick Rude. So that was pretty emotional for the little Sydal brothers.
I bet.
And,
I bet.
That was a time of, I mean, we didn't have cable at my home. Cable was around at that time, but we just didn't really have, excuse me, ma'am. We didn't really have cable in my home. So we would go to the video store and rent like VHS videos of like WWF pay-per-views.
Cool. And then who are some of your kind of heroes, some of the larger than life characters that you enjoyed watching, both yourself and your brother back in those early years then?
Well, definitely, yeah. Steamboat and Rick Rude had his own, even though he had so much charisma. It's hard not to pay attention to him. And then later, like as a teenager, what brought me back into it and really made me a fanatic was Stone Cold Steve Austin. And like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Degeneration X. And I liked Goldust a lot. Yeah,
he was a captivating character. I found him quite interesting myself, but yeah, it's all good. And still, Dustin is doing the business, doing some fantastic stuff in AEW. Even as we speak, he must be well over 30 years into his career now and still producing the goods. But so it's a bit, in my research, I established that you kind of grew up in the St. Louis area. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yeah, I grew up in St. Louis, a great wrestling city, a lot of wrestling history there.
Yeah.
So and that also helped with us being wrestling fans. St. Louis always has like several different independent wrestling companies running on. So you can see an independent show almost every weekend of the month, if not every weekend, just in your hometown there in St. Louis. So that was pretty cool. When we found out when we were teenagers and found out about independent wrestling, it was just mind blowing. And I got my driver's license and I could just drive us. We could just go to the shows every weekend. That was really cool. Yeah, St. Louis is great wrestling. And then of course, what was then WWF and now WWE, they swing through there every few months, usually like 3 to 4 times a year. So a good place to be if you're a wrestling fan.
Well, I was going to say that St. Louis is good. I mean, everybody knows St. Louis has got such a rich history in wrestling, pro wrestling, and WWE obviously swings by. But besides that, it's really created some legends of the business over the years. But now, obviously, you mentioned your mother, Matt, who is obviously, some of my listeners might know him as Evan Bourne from WWE, of course, and a former X Division champion in Impact and a champion over in New Japan.
Let's not forget, he was dual champion.
Yeah, he was indeed, and he had a lot of success over in New Japan as well, certainly in the junior heavyweight tag team division. So what was it like with the two kind of Sydal brothers growing up, huge wrestling fans? Did you ever get into trouble doing wrestling moves on one another? Did your parents kind of, how did they handle you two kind of being such big wrestling fans? And did you ever get into any trouble trying moves on one another?
I don't know if we ever got into any trouble doing moves. I do remember when we were Matt's always been real acrobatic. When we were real little, we would watch the Smurfs, and there was I remember one season on the Smurfs they introduced, I forget the guys, it was like Jungle Smurf or something. He would swing from the vines, and Matt loved him because he would swing around and do flips. So Matt would hang. We had a bunk bed. We shared a room, and Matt would like hang off the bunk bed like the guy from the Smurfs, and then he would jump off, and he got a little bit of heat from my parents for that. But as we got older and got into wrestling, I wouldn't say we ever got into any trouble for it. It was really a positive and productive thing for us. So Of course, it gave us something positive to do, a healthy way to enjoy time with our friends by watching wrestling. And then when we got a trampoline and started our backyard wrestling company, then that gave us another healthy way to stay active and express our love of pro wrestling. We didn't really get in any trouble. Eventually, we built a ring in our backyard, and I do remember my mom saying that it was, quote, an eyesore. But beyond that, I don't think we got any. It was really a good positive influence in our lives.
Yeah, and tell us a bit about the backyard wrestling there, because I didn't realise that you'd kind of created your own little promotion between you and your brother. Tell us a bit more about that then, and did you have kind of all the kids from the local neighbourhood come to see you perform? How did that work, and how long did you keep that going for?
Yeah, that was maybe 3 or 4 years we did that, and we just put on a show
Wow.
every few months. We put on maybe like 3, 4 shows a year. And so first we had the trampoline, and we had a tree next to it, and we had two trees. So we tied ropes from one tree to the next, and we had one side with ropes. And when we needed to hit the ropes, we would hit the one side of the trampoline that had ropes. And then eventually we built our own ring. That was a joint effort from between us and the other neighborhood kids that we would wrestle with. So we put the ring together using scraps that we found in dumpsters. We found that you could pick up spare tires that people had dumped, like at gas stations and auto shops, and we would take those home and use those. And then we built our own ring, and that had four sides and four sides of ropes. So then it was we felt more like we were running a real pro show at that
Yeah.
point, and then had people from the neighborhood, and then there were other, again, so St. Louis, not only a great scene for pro wrestling, but also a great scene for backyard wrestling. So some of the kids that did backyard wrestling from other areas of town would come watch us, and we would go to their shows, and sometimes we would exchange talent and wrestle on their shows as well.
Yeah, some inter-promotional backyard in there.
Yeah, yeah, those interpromotional dream matches.
Indeed, indeed. So, when did you start your formal training for pro wrestling then, Mike? And am I right in thinking that Matt may have started at a slightly different time to yourself? Tell us about how that all transitioned then.
Yeah, so I think we stopped backyard wrestling in 2000, and at that time I went to college, and Matt was still in high school. And to me, that was kind of that was like, okay, I'm done backyard wrestling. I suppose I'll just eventually find new interests. And Matt was really into it. So he found a local company, which was called Gateway Championship Wrestling at the time. And now that has become what's now Dynamo Pro Wrestling, a really, really fun wrestling company to watch and to work for. I work for them from time to time. Love those guys. So he started training with them in 2000, and he just took off. I mean, he's been always very naturally athletic, and he's always been involved in sports. So it was, I think, and he was also an amateur wrestler at the time. It was a natural transition for him, and he really loved it. So he took to it really fast. And meanwhile, and he also, it's not like he was just doing that. I mean, he was finishing up high school, and then he went to college, all while he was training and then getting on the road and wrestling as well. And as for me, I focused on college and whatever college kids do. I was playing frisbee or whatever and having a good time. Yeah, man. And it wasn't until probably it was right after I had graduated college, and I just thinking like, what am I going to do with my life? And thinking back, well, the most fun I ever had in my life was backyard wrestling. So
Indeed,
yeah,
yeah.
I called Matt and I said, yeah, I think I need to make a bit of a left turn here. And he said, of course he'd help me out as much as he could. And at the same time, I was starting graduate school. So while I started graduate school, and personally, I have not been just not a natural athlete. I just that wasn't what I focused on as a kid as much as Matt did. So before I started training in the ring, I took a good 2 years to get myself into really good physical condition so that I would be ready. And so that involved going to the gym, lifting weights, running, doing yoga, and getting involved in gymnastics. So then when I eventually got in the ring, when I started training in maybe 2007, then I was ready to go.
Yeah. And did you use the same training facility, training school as Matt did, or did you have to go out and find your own training school at the time? How did that process work for you at the time then?
You know, at first, and maybe 2005, 2006, I was doing like I was taking like seminars. Like a wrestler would come into town and like this. So I was going to school in mid-Missouri, and St. Louis is 2 hours east. Kansas City was 2 hours west. So if there was a big seminar coming in, then I would go attend that. And sometimes Matt was teaching those seminars, so that was always really cool. But other than that, I didn't really train at the same place as he did. I trained. There was some guys that had a ring inside a barn somewhere in mid Kansas, and they didn't really know anything about wrestling, but it was a ring where I could get in
Yeah.
and actually practice the mechanics of like running the ropes and falling down, which I'm sure most of you probably know we call taking bumps, and then it wasn't really until then. And so I started doing shows, even though I wasn't fully trained, but I was very athletic. I could do flips. So like I would go to show, I would find where the nearest independent wrestling show was, and I would go and I would like help set up. And then after we set up the ring, I would get in the ring and like run the ropes and get some practice and start doing flips. And when the promoters would see that I could do flips, I would say, "Hey, can I sneak on the show? Can I get a spot here? Can you throw me into the battle royal or whatever?" So that's kind of how I started wrestling, even before I started training. And then I met up with a guy named Mark Sterling, who had been trained by Harley Race, and started going on the road with him. And then he really trained me just in rings all over the Midwest. Every time we would travel to a show, he would which was every week. Then he would train me in that way.
Yeah. And was there a main promotion that you would work with during those early years? Because I know 3XW certainly jumps out as being a promotion that you're fairly close to, certainly in the early years. But I know that you also worked for a number of other smaller promotions around the Midwest in those first 2 or 3 years. Did you find that kind of working for different promotions helped you develop faster during those early years of your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. 3X Wrestling up in Des Moines. So that's just about 2.5, 3 hours north of where I am now, here in Kansas City. Yeah, they were really my home for the first couple of years that I was wrestling. Me on every show, and that was one of the shows where I just went up on a hope and I said, "Hey, please let me help set up your ring," and that ended up working out for me. They liked me. They gave me like a very little spot the first time, and I was in the ring for maybe 20 or 30 seconds, and then they liked me, and then the next time I got like a couple of minutes, and then it kind of snowballed from there. Yeah, they really gave me a lot of opportunities, and they're still doing that. One thing I really liked about, if not exactly addressing your question here, but just one thing I really liked and still do about 3X Wrestling is they are not one of these companies that's trying to be Vince McMahon. I think they kind of understand that they are a place to find the stars before they're stars, and part of that is giving the new guys a shot. And so on their shows, hey, sometimes they have 8, 9, or 10 matches on their shows, but for one, I think you can never say that you're not getting your money's worth when you go to a 3X Wrestling show. And then number two, that gives guys who need that experience the chance to get that experience. So yeah, I did a lot of 3X Wrestling in those first couple years, and then I started doing like Dynamo Pro, like I mentioned, and started going to the Harley Race School in I think I went to the Harley Race camp in 2008, and boy, I feel like that 1 week at the camp really put me in fast forward. That's in mid-Missouri, so it's about 2.5 hours from where I live here. At least it was at the time. Now it's a little bit closer to St. Louis, but and just it's world-class training. I mean, Harley Race is undeniable. So that was really helpful. And then after I did the camp, then I started going there during the weeks when I could sneak away from work a little bit early, and that really helped me learn like the fundamentals of pro wrestling and reinforce the things that Mark Sterling had taught me.
Yeah, and you mentioned about training at the Harley Race camp there. Did you get the opportunity to meet or to work with or spend any time with Mr. Race himself?
Mostly Harley was just yelling at me from the sidelines. Like, when I would do something and a rookie mistake or whatever in the ring, I would just hear like, "What the fuck was that?"
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can curse on this
No,
show, man.
you can. No, cursing's
okay.
fine. Carry on.
and That is a direct quote, so it was just I would say, oh, sorry, sir. And then,
No, that's cool.
would do it
And
again.
I think I read correctly that in 2009. Now, I think I've done my research correctly here, but you were Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Rookie of the Year in 2009. Now, did that come as a surprise to you? I mean, you must have been delighted with that accolade so
Oh,
early on in your career. That must have kind of blown you away.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. It was pretty mind blowing.
Mm.
Um, a big part of that was a guy who was running a company that I was working for out of St. Louis. His name was Kenny Garrett. He passed away recently, but I think he saw potential in me, and he helped organize a kind of a campaign because those awards are voted on by the readers of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. So he kind of organized a campaign to get the word out that I was a rookie, and he kind of showed my footage to people, and got a lot of people to vote for me. Incidentally, his daughter is now working for WWE.
Ah.
Santana. She's also been working in she was in Impact before, very, very talented as well. So wrestling runs in her family as well. I know how that goes.
Indeed, indeed. And that must run fairly parallel with you joining the Ring of Honor dojo and starting to work for Ring of Honor. Was that around 2010 when you started with Ring of Honor? And you spent a couple of years, well, you spent 3 years with Ring of Honor and a few years in their dojo. Tell us about kind of training at the Ring of Honor dojo, because when you think back to the really, really exciting talent that must have been training alongside you at the dojo around that time, it's pretty mind-blowing. Tell us about that time at the dojo back in 2009, 2010, the kind of early years with ROH.
Yeah, I mean, really, really great memories of the Ring of Honor dojo. So I went up there for the first time in the summer of 2009. So I had taken some time off work, and I had enough money for gas and to pay for the training. Didn't have enough money to stay pardon me, to rent an apartment or anything. So I was relying on the kindness of strangers for couches, and then sometimes just crashing in my car. So it was and I don't mean that literally, like crashing my car. I mean like sleeping, spending the night in my car,
Yeah.
whatever. And it was worth it in every way because I got to get up to the Ring of Honor school and get some really important training that I needed. So that was in summer of 2009, and then I think I wrestled my first match for them in October of 2009, when they swung through St. Louis. And then I went back up there for a 3-month deal in 2010 and trained up there. Yeah, so the training is great. So Delirious at the time was the head trainer of the school, a brilliant wrestling mind for sure. And that was where I'd done my first group yoga because I had always just done it on my own. I found out about yoga through DDP's book back in like 2006. He wrote a book called Yoga for Regular Guys, and just
Brilliant.
the way he explained the breathing and the movement, it really connected with me, and I was hooked on yoga from that time. And so it was really cool. Like it was cool on my first day of Ring of Honor training to find out that he has us do like 30 minutes of yoga Pilates before we get in the ring. And it's just a great habit to be in because I think it helps keep the body safe. And I had experienced, it's similar like at Harley Race where they have you do some stretches and some calisthenics before you get in the ring. But the yoga is actually literally translated means unity. So when you put together the calisthenics with the stretching with your breath, then it becomes yoga. So that was kind of the difference there at Ring of Honor. And Delirious works you hard, and but you learn a lot. And he's a really good communicator. And yeah, like you said, there's some really good talent coming through. So I think 2010 is when Cheeseburger started there. He's obviously he's got super famous recently, and
Yeah.
guys like Rhett Titus and Grizzly Redwood. I know Adam Cole came through there a few times when I was up there, and just a lot of really talented names have gone through the Ring of Honor wrestling school.
Indeed, indeed. I have it down here on my notes that Ring of Honor gave you a bit of a break from 2010 through to 2013. You wrestled a few more matches for them in 2015, but when you look back, when you look at kind of WWE, AEW, NXT, and a lot of their top stars, they pretty much started or kind of started to make their name in the business with Ring of Honor around that time. I mean, if I just kind of cherry pick some of the people that you went up against, the various TV tapings and dark matches, Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Tyler Black, who we now know as Seth Rollins, of course, in WWE, Christopher Daniels, Mike Bennett, Tommaso Ciampa, and so many more. I mean, that's pretty mind-blowing that 10 years ago, you know, they were kind of starting out in the business and you kind of were going through the motions with them at Ring of Honor. And, you know, that's a pretty impressive talent pool to have. And you were kind of there and amongst them during that time.
Yeah, I was very, very fortunate to be able to get in the ring with those guys. Definitely, every time I was in the ring with them, learned something. So yeah, it was very helpful. So I think Ring of Honor saw some potential in me, and you know, I'm fortunate for that. So and it was one of those things where I was just there all the time between like 2010 and 2013. I was just there all the time. So it was like when a spot opens up, well, we know we have this guy, and we know Mike's hanging around, so we can throw him in a match here. And eventually got to the point where I was getting like booked actually like in advance, which was really cool for me, like to see my name on the list when I got there, as opposed to just seeing a blank space and hoping that they put my name. That was cool. Yeah, I started a tag team with Zizou Madu from
The
South
Party
Africa.
Boys, yeah.
Always had a lot of fun with that. We wrestled Cedric Alexander, I remember, and Caprice Coleman on TV. Yeah, we wrestled ACH and TD Thomas up in Milwaukee. Yeah, a Ring of Honor is really cool because they kind of like they help make the stars. Once the guys are stars, then I think to use a term that you used just a minute ago, then WWE kind of cherry picks the top stars from Ring of Honor. But when they are becoming stars, they're in Ring of Honor, and that's where the stars are made. So it was really cool to be there to see them making themselves into stars, and then going on to bigger things.
Of course, yeah, very much so. And I was going to mention your tag team with the Party Boys with Zizou, and you had great fun with him. But what would you say was your kind of highlight of working for Ring of Honor over them 3 years then, Mike?
Yeah, so from 2010 to 2013, what was my highlight? Yeah, there were so many, dude. Yeah, I had a really good singles match with Kyle O'Reilly in San Antonio back in maybe I think that was 2013. 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
It had a really fun match with Rhett Titus in Milwaukee. I think that was 2012. Yeah, really the highlight for me is being on Ring Crew. So when you're part of the school, you have the opportunity to be on Ring Crew with Ring of Honor, which means you don't sleep on the weekends, but so you load the ring up into the trucks, and then you haul the ring to whatever city the Ring of Honor is in on that Friday, and you set up the ring, and then you watch the show, and you try to learn. You try to learn from the wrestlers that you're watching, and maybe they throw you a bone and put you in a match. Then when the show's over, you tear down the ring, and by 2 a.m. it's loaded into the trucks, and you drive to the next city, and you maybe get a couple hours of sleep if you're lucky, 2-3 hours. Then you set up the ring the next day, and but the thing is, because you're in such close quarters and spending so much time with those people, it's important to have really good people on the Ring Crew, and it's usually the students from the Ring of Honor school, and I'm just fortunate that the students from that school that make it onto Ring Crew are all like really cool people, really patient people, because man, when you're only sleeping 2-3 hours a night,
Yeah.
it's easy to go from here to here real fast, but they're really cool, real patient people, and just having a blast, man.
Yeah, it sounds like hard work, but I think that's what they call paying your dues. And you certainly did it during that time on very little sleep at the weekends, especially. But then you transition from ROH to Japan. You get your first tour of Japan with DragonGate, of course. Now, did you feel that a chance to wrestle in Japan was an opportunity that you couldn't turn down, meaning that you had to say goodbye to Ring of Honor, at least for the meantime, and take that next step in your career? What was that transition like for you, going from the States to Japan? It's a great opportunity, one you couldn't turn down, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I was not on a superstar deal for DragonGate. My deal with DragonGate was, at least for my first tour there in 2013, was if I fly myself out there, they will train me. That was the only guarantee I had, was I would get trained.
Yeah.
But like you said, an opportunity too good to pass up. So I did. I flew myself out there for a 3-month stay at the dojo, the DragonGate dojo there in Kobe, and it was very intense training. It's every day, and thing is, even though my only guarantee was that I would get trained, I kind of know myself and my abilities, and my hope was, at least, that after they saw what my abilities were, that they would start giving me a chance. Just the same thing like I was telling you with 3X Wrestling in Des Moines. I just kept showing up
Yeah.
and kept showing them what I could do, and eventually a spot opened up for me. So so then I got quite a few matches there. Ended up getting quite a few matches I was very happy about on my first tour there in 2013 with DragonGate. And so I kind of it was a change from Ring of Honor over to DragonGate, but absolutely worth it in every way.
Yeah. And you did a few other tours with them as well, didn't you? I think you went back, I think 2014 and 2015, you had a couple more tours with them. But what's kind of your lasting memories of doing those few tours with DragonGate and some of your opponents? And one curious question I've got for you, I mean, coming from the States, going over to a foreign land with a completely different audience, how did you kind of cope with the Japanese crowds, because they are different to an American audience, of course? And also, how did you kind of communicate with your Japanese opponents or partners in the ring? I mean, that must have been quite challenging for you.
Yeah. Okay. So with with the crowds, you're right. I mean, from watching wrestling, you can see that it's different for sure.
Yeah.
The crowds there just react differently, and like it's okay. That's where I finally learned it's okay if the crowd is quiet. It just means they're paying attention. So there was a time, like when I made my first or second match there. It was my first match in the DragonGate Sanctuary, which is what they call their building that they own downtown. They have like a little TV studio there where they record some matches with a smaller ring. It was my first match in that ring for their TV, and the crowd, which it's such a small, everything in Japan is kind of packed in because they don't have a whole lot of space. So people are packed into that place like sardines. They don't even have chairs. They're just standing, and they're just little dots on the ground where people stand, and the dots are spaced very close. I'm sure that wouldn't fly today with social distancing.
No.
But and I'm just thinking, why aren't these people reacting? Well, they were paying attention. They just it's different. And it was maybe my first or second match there, so I wasn't quite used to it yet. So I was just getting louder, hoping that if I yelled louder,
they would react. Yeah.
It didn't really work, but eventually, as the match went on, they were responding to the actions and the drama inside of the match. But then after the match, unplanned, one of the office guys came out while I was still in the ring, and said he took the microphone. And this made it onto TV too. He said, "Mike, good job. Maybe next time, calm down." So I learned that way. Yeah, and then for communication, I think one of the reasons that they agreed to take me as a trainee over in DragonGate is because I demonstrated my respect for their culture by learning the language. By no means was I an expert or even intermediate, but I could speak some basic Japanese, and so they could see that I was trying. Man, I had been following DragonGate around for years when they would come to the U.S., and then they would sometimes have tryouts, and they would say thanks and tell me how to improve, and I would try to take those suggestions and try to get better. But eventually it was like, I can't keep coming to these seminars once or twice a year. Like, I want to get trained by these guys. So then I busted out a little bit of Japanese, and I asked them in Japanese if they would please train me. So I think that's what got me over there. So I did. So speaking Japanese helped. So by the way, most of those dudes speak really good English.
I'm sure, yeah.
Even the guy, whatever level, the worst level of English that somebody has in Japan is better than my level of Japanese. So they're all multilingual, whether they will admit it or not, because they're very humble. And they also speak, especially at the DragonGate dojo, a lot of Spanish speakers. So, and I'm also Spanish. I also speak Spanish. So, and probably at that time, my Spanish was definitely better than my Japanese. So, probably that first tour, that first 3 months I was in Japan, I probably spoke more Spanish than either English or Japanese.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And like I say, between tours of Japan, you continue to work back in the States, of course, various indie groups, but one in particular, Lucha Libre Laughs in Denver, that really captured your heart, didn't it? And now I understand that you wrestled one match against C-Lab Crush, I think I'm announcing his name right there, in 2015.
Yeah.
And then you were back for a few more matches in 2016. And before you know it, you were involved in a program with Royce Isaacs for the LLL Heavyweight Championship. So quite an impressive introduction to a new company. And like I say, it did capture your heart pretty quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a big old party. Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you mentioned Caleb Crush because he was the one who told the promoter to take a look at me, and actually, I think it's because of that I was able to get my first match, because that was one of the ones, I mean, that was later on in my career, like you said, 2015 or so. So I didn't like go and help set up the ring or anything. Not that that's beneath me. I mean, I still do that sometimes,
Yeah.
but I wasn't doing it in that case. And but I got a call from the promoter like, hey, would you like to come work for me? So I said, yeah, sure. So yeah, I did. I had a good showing, real good match with Caleb Crush. He's really, dude's been wrestling since he's like 14 or something. So it's like second nature to him.
Yeah.
And wrestled him a couple times. He's really, really fun to wrestle. Just fun to hang out with in the locker room because he's such a funny dude. And then had a few more matches, and I think each match the promoter liked what I was doing, so gave me bigger and bigger opportunities. And eventually, got a title shot. I lost lost my first one or two, and then finally was able to capture the Lucha Libre Laughs heavyweight championship.
You did indeed, yeah. So I think was that a triple threat championship match in November 2017 when you got the title there. So after about a year and a half of chasing the title, you're finally the champion. So that must have been a great feeling and a very proud moment for you.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, that was with Lonnie Valdez. He was the champion at the time. Really acrobatic guy, and probably Cody Devine, who is an up and comer. It's cool. Like the cool thing about Lucha Libre Laughs is you catch, and kind of independent wrestling in general, is you catch people in different kind of stages of their pro wrestling journey. But you never kind of know like what stage you'll be in when your path crosses with somebody else on their journey. So it was cool to be in the ring with both of those, because Cody was kind of just starting out, and he was maybe 2 years in. And by that time, Lonnie had probably been wrestling 2 decades by that point. Dude's been around forever, and he still wrestles like an 18-year-old. I mean, super athletic, super acrobatic. And good wind. He had really, really good condition. So, that was a fun match. And I was very happy to have the title. The best part is when you have the title, that means the promoter has to book you at least one more time.
There we go.
It teed me that I would be back at least one more time.
One more payday.
It was really fun as the champion of that company. Some of the marquee matches. Not all of the marquee matches are the championship matches for Lucha Libre Laughs. Like he brings in like he'll fly in sometimes several different like bigger names, national or international names for a show. But some of those times I was fortunate to be able to as the champion to wrestle the bigger names like Keith Lee and Orange Cassidy. Had a lot of fun with them, but also able to wrestle. And again, this is kind of the paths crossing thing. So those guys are kind of like at the top of their career now. I mean, Keith Lee and Orange Cassidy definitely still coming up, but like they've been around for so long, and their stars are really shining right now. And then it also enabled me the opportunity to get in the ring and work like wrestle main event style with some of the newer guys. So newer guys like I mentioned, like Cody Devine and Anaya, who I know you talked with a couple weeks ago. It's really cool to see Anaya really prosper. One of the guys I feel the worst about in regard to the with wrestling careers and coronavirus, because just when dude is ready to break through, it's like well, now we're shutting down for a year or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was really cool to be able to work with him and the other local guy, like Bruce Rogers, Caleb Crush, so many of the local Denver guys who are still on their way up.
Yeah, indeed. And you held the title for 6 months. You defended it against, like, say, Orange Cassidy and Keith Lee and Anaya in that fantastic triple threat match.
18 months, man.
Was that 8 months?
Yeah.
My apologies.
Here's my theory. I'll share this. I haven't shared this theory with you. If I may put on the tinfoil hat. So some people say the coronavirus is a Democratic hoax, which I beg to differ with. I disagree. But I do think there's a possibility that the coronavirus is an Anaya hoax, because I was the longest reigning Lucha Libre Laughs champion in the company's history. Right after Anaya wins the title, all of a sudden we have this coronavirus and we can't have a wrestling match. So he just gets to sit around and hold on to the title and say he's the champion. So I think maybe the coronavirus is the Anaya hoax so that he could eventually become the longest reigning champion in Lucha Libre Laughs history.
And maybe in the history books there might be a little asterisk above Anaya's name. I don't know, but yeah. But I mean, some of the other fantastic wrestlers you defended your title against: Taya, Valkyrie, Colt Cabana, Marty the Moth, Royce Isaacs as well, former champion, tried to regain it, but you held on to the title. So it was a great 8-month reign, not 6 months, 8-month reign, and you must be very proud of your championship.
When you say, it's funny, like we list off the names that I was able to wrestle with, like in Ring of Honor and then in Lucha Libre Laughs. I get such a kick out of it because I just never expected something. I kind of generally don't have expectations on things. I just do the best I can, one day at a time, one moment at a time, and I feel that will eventually lead me to good places. I suppose I didn't have any expectations to wrestle all these accomplished wrestlers. It's just so much fun to hear you go off the list of all these people that I've been able to wrestle and have so much fun with and learn from, and then it's so cool when I get to see them be successful on TV elsewhere.
Indeed. Let's talk a bit about your gimmick then, Mike, because you are the Yoga Monster. I understand that yoga's been a big part of your life for many, many years now. But when did you start incorporating yoga into your wrestling persona?
Yeah, good question. So I think I touched on earlier, I started doing yoga there in like 2006 when I got that DDP book. It wasn't until... Oh, it was my first tour of DragonGate there in 2013. I was in so DragonGate, for those who are, for the uninitiated, DragonGate is kind of set up where all the wrestlers are in alliance groups. And the group that they put me in when on my first tour there was called Monster Express. So each wrestler in the group had their own like specialty. So, and here's where I'm going to come out with some names again, and it's just mind blowing. So, I was in there with Shingo, who is now in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He was the Power Monster. I was in there with Uhaa Nation, who's now Apollo Crews in WWE. He was the Strong Monster. There was Ricochet, who is in the group. He was the high flying monster. Tozawa was the stamina monster. And so it just made sense for me with all the yoga that I was doing. They started calling me the Yoga Monster. So that really is when I started incorporating yoga into my persona of what I am in the ring. The cool thing about that, man, is once I started doing that, then my wrestling character became more like my real self. And man, when I go back and I look at like my old matches and my old kind of my old interviews and promos, it always seemed like a little bit forced and a little bit like rehearsed, just because I was trying to kind of be somebody or something that I wasn't. And now that I'm the Yoga Monster, I mean, that's what I am every day of my life. So I can just be myself, and maybe like they say, turn the volume up, of course, but I never get lost. I always know whether I'm talking, whether I'm like doing an interview, or whether I'm in the ring with my actions. I always know what to do because I don't have to think like, what would somebody do in this situation? It's me. I know what I would do in this situation, so I just do it.
It just made sense. It just made sense. And when you say, would you say, sorry, that yoga has helped you cope with injuries or soreness after a match? And would you say that yoga has also helped the length of your career, a bit more longevity because of the yoga that you've been practicing?
Yeah. So, as we grow older, it just takes a little bit more time to recover. And being in wrestling for 13 years, that means I'm 13 years older than when I started. So it definitely helps with the recovery. I have had some injuries, so I've hurt both my MCLs, my left and my right MCL, and healed from those. I was able to avoid surgery by very carefully doing yoga. And taking time and doing physical therapy. Yoga is a big part of that. So yeah, it's definitely helped with injuries. Man, I don't know how I would be vertical today without yoga. It's just it's what they call like a holistic way to heal your body.
Yeah. Yeah, and you hear a lot of people say great things about DDPY, the likes of Chris Jericho and Mick Foley and other active wrestlers that use it today, that they preach by yoga as kind of helping them overcome soreness and injuries and just add to their career. So that's really, really cool. But let's switch back, if we can, to Lucha Libre and Laughs, and because I think we spoke a bit off air, and I think we might have touched on it already. I'm a massive Lucha Libre and Laughs fan. I know that you're a big advocate of it, but it's probably the most unique wrestling promotion anywhere in the world. Also in Denver, it is very, very unique. You have live commentary playing over the speakers during the matches. You have comedy between the matches as well. It's a very unique setting as well with the Oriental Theatre, which really adds to the overall presentation. Its vibe is completely different to anything I've come across before. But what's your take on Triple L and everything that it has to offer?
Yeah, that's the big party. Is Lucha Libre Laughs the biggest party in Denver? Maybe not the biggest in terms of people, although we always sell out. A sellout of that theater is between 500 and 600 people, which for people who follow American independent wrestling, that's a pretty darn big independent wrestling show.
Number. Yeah,
so definitely it's the best party in Denver. So the way it's set up is they have a host, and then we get started with a comedian to warm up the crowd, and then there's a wrestling match, and then another comedian and another wrestling match. Now, after the comedians are done with their set, they go down into the crowd where the commentary booth is, and they do commentary over the wrestling match. And so then the commentary, like while you're watching the matches, the commentary is also making the matches more hilarious.
Indeed. And I did ask Anaya this, and I'm going to ask you the same question. During the matches while it's all going on, I know he said he's kind of in the zone, he's focused, but do you ever get distracted by the commentary, and especially some of the jokes that get performed during the matches with everything going on around you? Does it ever distract you?
Yeah, now, so it kind of like Anaya, a lot of the times I am kind of in the zone, and it's loud in there, and you're in the ring. The sound system is the speakers are facing the crowd, so they're not facing the ring, so we don't hear everything. Time to time, though, God, they just, I'm trying to act. It's hard enough for me to act like a tough guy, and then I'll hear something like I did. So the two main commentators are Sam Talent and Nathan Lund.
Yes.
And they're local Denver comedians. I mean, they travel around as well throughout the country, but they're local at Denver, so they're at most of the shows. I just remember one time I did a moonsault from the top rope to the outside. And I couldn't tell you if it was Sam or Nathan that said it, but he said, "Oh my God, folks, there were people who jumped from the World Trade Center on 9/11 who didn't jump so high." I was like, I'm going to keep my head down for a minute so I can not show my reaction to people.
Yeah.
And then get myself together and come back up.
But they are very kind of close to the knuckle with some of their comments, and yes, but I'd love to go there myself one day and experience it for myself. If I'm ever in the States, I've got to make a special trip to Denver and kind of catch a Triple L show in person. It's definitely on my bucket list. But I mean, besides your singles success, you've had much success as a tag team wrestler as well, Mike. More recently, you're pairing with is it Luke Langley as one half of Enlightenment, but you did manage to tag with your brother Matt, didn't you, at a Lucha Libre and Laughs show? I think it was last June now, so about a year ago, against the 1% Royce Isaacs and Jorrell Nelson, of course. Was that the first time that you've officially teamed with your brother Matt? And it's another, great match, by the way, fantastic match, one of the best tag matches I've seen in a long, long time. But you must have been super proud to have tagged with your brother in your favorite promotion during that night in Triple L.
Absolutely, yeah. Proud's the word for it, Yeah, that was actually we've only tagged together 3 times. That was the third. So we tagged for the first time. We tagged in Japan in 2015 there for DragonGate. So that was really cool. And then we tagged once in Denver in 2016. And then for a promotion called Primos, which they have their own kind of pro wrestling niche in Denver that sets them apart. It's like a mixed bag at Primos. Like you may get like a super technical or high flying match, and then the next match, people are beating each other over the heads with baseball bats or whatever. It's a really fun promotion to work for as well. And then for the third time we were able to tag there for Lucha Libre Laughs. Yeah, and what was really cool is being able to wrestle the 1%. But there's a team that's another kind of like Anaya case where that is a team that's just ready to break through, and now they're kind of in holding pattern for during the coronavirus. But so it was really, really cool to be able to get in the ring with both of those guys and then experience the chemistry between the 2 teams. That was a lot of fun.
Indeed.
I feel like there was another part of your question besides teaming. Oh yeah, and so I've been doing around Kansas City. I have been doing more tag team wrestling with Luke Langley. So we started training together back in 2017. When there was a company here called NWL, and the company eventually went out of business, but fortunately shortly thereafter then Niles Planquet opened up his ring to train and up at the winery. So the more we trained together, the more we found we just had very similar philosophies on wrestling and had some good chemistry together. So we started tagging together in Kansas City and in Des Moines. And but he's so much fun to tag. He's really, really athletic. The only downside is dude has a physique. It's like 11 out of 10. So I coming out next to him, it's like I better be on point with my physique, because I'm going to look really bad next to this guy if I'm not. So actually, I should probably just look at that as a positive. It's a good motivation to stay in awesome shape.
Indeed.
Yeah. So I have a lot of fun with him. He also, he does yoga with me, and he's up there at the winery with me at least until the quarantine. He's up at the winery with me every week, training and hard. He's really good, and probably. He may dispute this, but I'd say it's fair to say he's the king of Oklahoma independent pro wrestling. Like he's a hustler, man. He's out there doing double and triple shots every weekend. Again, until the quarantine, he's always out there and hitting the road and trying to get that important experience and trying to get better. And it shows too. He's gotten so much better in the past 3-4 years and keeps getting better.
Indeed, you've sold me. I'm going to try and get Luke on the podcast. He sounds like a top guy, but
he's also a funny dude.
Yeah, indeed. And we've spoken a lot about Lucha Libre Laughs. No, I have said that it's one of my favorite promotions anywhere at the moment. It's so unique. And I know that my listeners, if you want to catch more Lucha Libre Laughs, just hit their YouTube channel. You've got a lot of free matches on there, a lot of free content, and a really, really fun promotion to get into. But before we say goodbye to you, I need to kind of touch on, you have had some appearances on WWE TV, Mike. Now, I'll just go through, I think there's 3 matches in total. You had a match with Noam Dar on 205 Live in May last year. Then in November of last year, you was on 205 Live again in a tag match with Craig Kieserman, I think is correctly pronounced, and that was against the Lucha House Party. And then in another tag match with your tag team partner Bryant, you came out as the Chicago Cubs against the Viking Raiders. So some good exposure there, a really good experience to be on WWE TV. I mean, how did that get arranged? I mean, did they approach you? I mean, obviously, when they're passing through, they probably get in touch with local talent. But how did that opportunity come about? Kind of, what's your kind of overall experience of that WWE experience, basically?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, they kind of familiarize themselves with local wrestlers, and when they come through town, they'll give the local guys that they're maybe have some interest in a call, and then you show up and maybe a spot opens up, maybe it doesn't. And I'm lucky enough that the 3 of those times that I showed up, a spot opened up, and they put me in the spot. So they must not absolutely hate me, because they didn't just use me once; they used me 3 times. So they must like me somehow. There's something about me they don't hate. So I'm happy with that. And yeah, the thing with it's interesting that you mentioned earlier, like seeing all these guys that are superstars in WWE now, when they were kind of ready to break through, like making themselves into stars in Ring of Honor. Yeah, I remember being at the tryout seminar that the Viking Raiders were at for Ring of Honor, and that's where I met them. And then of course I saw them at shows and would hang out with them from time to time, just kind of hanging out and talking a little bit at the shows. So years when I hadn't seen them for years, but then down the line when I saw them at WWE, they said, "Hey, I think we're supposed to wrestle some local guys tonight. Would you be interested in that?" I said, "Yes, I would." So it really helped me to get out. And you did mention this earlier when you asked, like, did it help me to get out of my local area and go to different cities and wrestle? And absolutely it did. So in addition, really the primarily important thing of doing that is getting to see other styles and experience other wrestlers in other places, and incorporate the best pieces of what I find there, and also kind of into my own presentation, and also get to know those different crowds, because every city is kind of has a little bit of a different vibe to it. But then the other kind of bonus about that of getting out of my comfort zone, of my hometown, is making the connections with people. And that just happens. The Viking War Raiders just kind of happened to be one of those connections that ended up coming back full circle for me.
Indeed, yeah. And I personally think that WWE could do with a good yoga-based gimmick. I think you could be a good fit there. I think they haven't got a yoga-based gimmick, so yeah, let's get you on the show more frequently, definitely. But 205 Live is a good fit for your NXT, but hopefully you'll have more appearances on WWE TV fairly soon. And when you got to the back for any of your matches, did you have any interaction with some of the bigger names there, or did you get any feedback from any of the agents? What was it like after the matches?
Yeah, so I remember after my match with the Viking War Raiders, our agent for the match was Devon Dudley, and he just had some really, really encouraging feedback for me. Real positive guy, and yeah, just some good words of encouragement. It was a very positive experience overall.
Superb. Mike Sydal, it's been wonderful talking to you on the Wrestling with John's podcast. It's been an absolute blast talking to you for the last 60 minutes. So thank you very much indeed, my friend. But before we let you go, is an opportunity for you to throw out to my listeners and viewers any social media handles. Where can we find you on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook? And if you've got any merch to plug as well, the floor is yours, my friend.
Okay, so Lucha Libre Laughs coming back tentatively August 21st and 22nd in Denver, Colorado, the Oriental Theater. Get your tickets now. I won't be on the show, I don't think, but a lot of awesome talent will be on the show. Everything I described is 100% true. You have to see it to believe it. If you are interested in finding out a little bit more about me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Yoga Salt is my handle, YOGASAULT, Yoga Salt. For those of you who are unfamiliar, that is my finishing move that I invented. It's a moonsault from the top rope. I hold my yoga mat, and as I do the backflip, the yoga mat opens up and I land on top of my opponent. So yeah, I'm Yoga Salt and also on YouTube. So in addition to having some matches up on YouTube under Yoga Salt, I also have a few instructional yoga videos if you're interested in expanding your mind and your body and your soul.
There we go. Well, thank you very much, Mike. And as always, we'll make sure that all of the descriptions and all the handles are added to the description in this podcast or video. So just click into the description. All the links will be there to go and find out more about the Yoga Monster, Mike Sydal, and all of his great stuff. And I'm guessing you've got some merch to sell as well. Is that on Pro Wrestling Tees, or have you got your T-shirts to sell, or anything new?
Go on Pro Wrestling Tees and buy a Black Wrestlers Matter T-shirt.
Good show.
It's not mine. I don't make any money off it, but it goes to a good cause.
Good shout, and thank you once again to Mike. So there we go. Please keep it tuned to the Wrestling with Johners podcast, and if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to spread the word. Tell your friends and tell your family. Don't forget to press that ever important follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to this on, or watching this on YouTube, of course, so that you don't miss out on a single episode. Thanks again to Mike Sydal for being a fantastic guest on the Wrestling with Johners podcast. Thanks to everybody for listening, and thanks to everybody for watching, and we'll catch up with you all again very soon.